All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Locke. I'm the IBPA Director of Membership and Member Services. And we have a really cool series called the Get to Know Your IBPA Member Benefits. And we focused in on a member benefit each time. And today we're going to be doing PR by the book, but they also have two benefits. One's their author to influencer program. And to talk about both of these, we have the amazing award-winning publicist and founder of PR by the book, Marika Flatt. Hello.
Hi, Christopher. Thank you for inviting me. Nice to be here.
Yeah, so I'm going to disappear and Marika's going to take it away.
Okay, sounds good. So just a little background. First of all, IBPA is near and dear to my heart. I have been a part of IBPA for probably over 2 decades total. I am constantly singing their praises to small publishers that I talk to because I honestly feel like IBPA is one of the best resources out there for independent publishing. And I have spoken at many publishing universities over the years and just really care a lot about this organization. So we are happy to be a part of it. And a little background on me, I started as a book publicist 26 plus years ago, and I graduated from college. I landed into the perfect job for me and stayed with a small firm for 7 years. Meanwhile, the last couple of years, just kind of playing around with the PR by the book brand a little bit. And so left there, launched PR by the book, and this month we celebrate 21 years. So we've been around for a long time, and we've seen quite the evolution in book publicity, as you can imagine. I always like to say that when I started out, I was faxing press releases, and now we're tweeting to journalists these days. So you can imagine the change that we have seen over here. And I do believe that today's workshop will showcase how we work really hard to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to book publicity. So we are a small team. We are based in Austin, Texas. That's where I live. And we have publicists in New York, Santa Fe, Phoenix, Dallas, and here in Austin. So I'm going to be talking about this overarching topic of how publishers can build an author's influence for publicity. And we have quite a long PowerPoint here today. So some of these screens I will not spend a ton of time on because Christopher will get this delivered to your inbox as a presentation after today. So you can go in and read word for word if you care to. But I want to hit the highlights of this topic so that we can leave plenty of time for Q&A towards the end. And feel free to, like Christopher said, put those in the Q&A, and I'm going to keep an eye on the time here so that we can make sure that we get to that. So let's go ahead and get started here. I also did want to mention that we work with a wide variety of clients. And so I'm going to be talking today from the independent publisher point of view. We work with quite a few independent publishers. We do have authors that hire us directly. So as you're thinking about this today in terms of your member benefit, because we're a small company, we're very flexible in terms of whether the publisher hires us to work on one or more books that they're bringing out, or whether the publisher wants to extend this benefit to their authors to work with us directly. So just keep that in mind. So I want to start out by talking about influence. So many people hear this word and they think influencer, they think Kardashian, but that is not in the vein that we're going to be discussing influence today. Influence, in terms of how we see an author's influence at PR by the book, is based on the fact that they wrote a book for a reason, and there is a target audience for that book. And we want them to have influence over the reader, the buyer, the consumer, whatever niche they might be in. And so we're not talking about influence in the way of, oh, I'm turning my author into an influencer who's out there on the interwebs charging for posts and things of that sort. No, we're not turning people into the Kardashians. What we want is for them to have influence over their market. And so I'm not going to read this screen word for word, but we all know why it matters. It matters for a variety of reasons, because this world, this media world and consumer world, we know how crowded it is. We know how hard it is to get attention for an author and therefore their book. And this is the name of the game. If you don't, the book sits on the proverbial shelf, the online shelf, so to speak. We used to say sits in the bookstore shelf, on the bookstore shelf, but now it's more so related to, it's just out there and it hasn't been discovered by the reader. So that's what we're here for at PR by the Book. And we have been doing it for a long time, and we feel like we have a really good handle on what moves the needle for an author. And it's just absolutely crucial for an author's success. And here we talk about all of the many different ways that influence can have an effect on an author and their book, and therefore their publisher. So all of these things probably sound pretty great to most of you. We at PR by the Book, we are focused on media relations and the digital realm of building up an author's social media and their digital presence. We're going to talk here a little bit later about virtual book tours that fall under that category. So there's a lot of different ways that you as a publisher on your own also can work to build up influence related to these things that you see on the screen here. And, you know, an author has different ways of measuring their own influence and success. When they come to PR by the Book, I oftentimes will ask that question. I spend a majority of pretty much every day of the week talking to authors, as that's part of my role here at PR by the Book. And so, you know, for someone, it might be, you know, they really want to get as much media exposure as possible because they want to be able to tout that on their website and have that open doors for them in terms of maybe building a speaking career, or maybe, you know, getting that next opportunity with a book that's coming down the pike, or maybe they just, you know, they want to use maybe they're using their book as a calling card for their business. And so, you know, all of these things fall under influence. And you as a publisher might be handling some of these things for your author. Submitting for author awards, like the Benjamin Franklin that we love that comes from IBPA, one of my favorite in the industry. So you might be doing that for your authors. You might have given that to them to do on their own. I actually have a great resource if you want to ask me later for submitting for author awards. But all of these things are important, and they all go into building that influence that an author will have. So here we're talking about kind of overarching ways that you as a publisher can help your authors to grow their influence. So you can see a couple of these are bolded because that's what we do at PR by the Book. And we're here to talk about your member benefits specifically. So we really work with the authors on building up their brand. A lot of authors that we work with at PR by the Book, they come to us, and it oftentimes might be their debut book. And so they have no influence at this point. They have no brand. And so we build their brand up from the ground up. And there's other partners that work alongside us sometimes who, you know, work in this industry, and maybe they build websites. I know that I really enjoyed listening to the podcast that Christopher did with my friend Jennifer Thompson of Monkey See Media. So there's people in this industry that we at PR by the Book work alongside, and that would be an example of that. But the ultimate goal is to continue to build up their brand, therefore finding those consumers that they can influence. So on the digital side, you see on number 2 here, providing guidance on content creation. So at PR by the Book, I really feel like one of the things that sets us apart from other book publicity opportunities out there is that we have an entire digital department. And this is one of the ways that we work very hard to stay ahead of all of those curves in terms of book publicity and promotion. So our digital department works with our authors in a variety of ways. And one is through our social media campaigns that I'll talk about a little bit more in depth here in a minute. But the social media campaigns do include content creation. They do include scheduling the social media content on the author's platforms. So that's one area that we work in. Another area on the digital side is our virtual book tours. Those are really, really popular. Primarily, we focus in on bookstagrammers on Instagram and book talkers on TikTok and booktubers on YouTube. But we also, if the virtual book tour is running alongside a publicity campaign, then we're going after traditional media and online media, podcasts, all of that sort of promotion. And that falls under number 3 that you see here under media coverage. So securing book reviews, getting interviews for our authors, getting them included in a feature. And so all of those fall under media outreach that we do. And it can include starting from their local and regional media, which is super important. And I talk about that with authors a lot, that you have to start from somewhere, right? And so we always want to be really clear in our expectations with our publisher clients and our author clients to be realistic about the expectations of how a publicity campaign builds, because you don't just work with a publicist and then, you're on the Today Show, like, bam, it just happens. Those cases are rare and few and far between. That would be considered top tier media. And, that not all authors are appropriate for top tier media, nor do they get that opportunity if they are appropriate. So it really is a build. You want to be, have very clear expectations on how you build up that brand to get there. One of the things that I like to make really clear is that we at PR by the Book, we envision media falling in 3 categories: low tier, mid tier, and top tier. What I always like to explain is that we spend the majority of our time going after mid-tier media outlets that are very targeted for our authors and their books, our publishers, so that we are focusing on that mid-tier that really is honed in on their audience. Yes, we pitch top tier, but we're not going to spend the majority of our time pitching top tier, because that's kind of like the creme de la creme of media exposure. Not all authors will get the creme de la creme, the top tier. And we don't want to spend our time on the low tier either. Yes, things will come through in a publicity campaign that we would categorize as low tier, but they're not because we spent our time going after it. It's because it basically evolved out of outreach that we were doing, and we love it. We feel like there are no small opportunities in publicity. You never know what a small media outlet will lead to for an author. And so we absolutely take advantage of those, but we don't spend our time targeting that low tier media. It comes, yes, but we really focus in on that mid-tier media, and it proves to be very successful for our authors. We feel like we know what we're doing after a couple of decades in this business. I do want to say a quick note here on book tours and speaking engagements. We do not schedule book events, but we do promote it to the media in that media market. So for instance, if an author is going to Dallas, for instance, and doing an event at Interabang Books, for instance, then we would be pitching the Dallas media for that event, leading up to that event? So I always like to answer that question. So here we have a screen related to, what we do here at PR by the Book. We like to call it the road to influence. We really spend time, because our publicists are, all of our publicists are senior publicists, except our one assistant publicist who works behind the scenes underneath our senior publicist. So we spend a lot of time from the get-go building the strategy. We start out with a group brainstorm that we do with our entire publicity team. There's about 10 of us, and we create the strategy around what makes the most sense for this particular book. And it's not a cookie cutter approach. It's not the same for all books. For one book, we might be focusing in on podcasts really heavily, for instance, because that's what the author has said that that's their main priority. For another book, it might be book reviews. And we can talk about timing here in a minute related to that. But book reviews are important, and more important for some genres than others. So we really customize our campaign based on what is going to move the needle for that particular book. And again, it is not the same for all books. So here is a little screen about traditional book publicity. You can find this on our website at prbythebook.com. And I'm not going to read this word for word, because again, you're going to get this screen and I don't want to run out of time. But we are spending a lot of time honing in on what we feel like media will respond to. So I have a background in media, in TV, and also I was on the radio on NPR for 5 years. My hobby is writing for an online magazine. And so I truly, truly, truly understand what media outlets are looking for. And so those compelling hooks and angles have to be solid, because if you don't have those, no media representative is going to give you the time of day with your email pitch or even your phone pitch, which is done far and far less these days than it used to. But one of the things that I want to have time to talk about here in a little bit is timely tie-ins. I feel like those are our silver bullets for getting media to respond to us, for getting them to have a call to action for them. Because one thing I like to explain is that, yes, we have our relationships with media outlets that we've booked with for years. Our individual publicists have their own relationships. We share those relationships throughout our team. But even if we pitch a book to a media outlet, if there is no timely tie-in, it's very easy for them to look at that pitch and say, hey, this is pretty interesting. This seems pretty unique to me. I'm going to file that away in my folder and come back to it. Well, that's not what we want to happen. We want them to look at that and reply to us and say, I'd like to get more information. I'd like to get a copy of the book. I'd like to hear more. And with a timely tie-in. So for instance, November is National Novel Writing Month. So we work with a lot of fiction. We have about a third of our campaigns right now are fiction. And so that would be an example of a timely tie-in. So we can talk more about that as our time allows coming up here. But you'll see, basically we're going after, we spend a lot of time looking at media queries through different resources throughout each and every day. Even on Twitter, there's a hashtag that journalists will utilize and put out there on Twitter. And we look for those. We look to see who do media outlets need for what particular types of stories or podcasts. And so, it is a very important process, and being a publicist is a very hard job. You are constantly climbing the mountain with a backpack on your back, to reach the, more and more steps up on the mountain. Media hits keep us going. They light our fire. And it is harder now than ever to get the media's attention. And so we as a team, we work harder than we probably ever did to get those media hits for our clients. All right. Now, the digital side is also very, very important these days. And like I said, we have an entire department that works in this area. All of these pieces work together. They're all like train tracks that run alongside each other. And that's why we love working on our gold level campaigns, which is later here in the presentation. Our gold campaign blends a social media campaign with a PR campaign. And so being able to keep that all under one roof works really well. And that means our digital team works alongside our publicity team. And those campaigns are some of our favorites to work on. Our silver campaign blends the full PR campaign with 2 hours of social media consulting per month. And that's the difference between gold and silver. Really, the only difference is that gold has the social media campaign, silver has 2 hours of consulting per month. And authors who want to do their own social media love our silver campaign because they get to consult with our digital media director and get those tips and tricks and hacks of how to promote a book through their social media. And they feel like they have a guide along the way. And so if they want to handle their own, that is what most people are on, is that silver level campaign. Both the gold and the silver include the virtual book tour, which is the third bullet point here on the screen. And the virtual book tour is where we are, and I talked about it briefly earlier, but we start pitching our virtual book tours 2 to 3 months prior to publication date, because we really want as much digital buzz happening around publication date as possible. And it takes time. I mean, even these bookstagrammers have, a long line of books, TBR, to be read, that they're wanting to promote on their outlets. And so we have to give them time. You used to be able to reach out to someone 4 to 6 weeks prior to a virtual book tour. And nowadays that's just really not enough time to organize and coordinate and get them everything they need. We create a Dropbox of media assets for each of our clients that we can share with them. It makes it very easy for us to get them what they need. And so in that Dropbox, the media assets would include things like their book cover, their headshot, our press materials, a Q&A with the author, all of those pieces that help. And a digital review copy that we have permission to share. And so it makes it seamless for the media outlet to be able to promote your author. And if you have any questions on any of this specifically, we can get to that in the Q&A. So platform development is important. Here again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this slide because this is a great slide for you to go back to when Christopher shares the presentation with you, because these are things that you can really think through as a publisher. You can have your authors thinking through it. Where do they stand on their platform development? Where do they fall with all of these important pieces of the puzzle? Because these are things to consider when developing, when on your road to influence, because all of these matter. They all matter. And most people are doing some much better than others. And so this screen, I feel like, will be a really good resource for you to really assess where is your author in building their influence. Where do they fall? They probably fall short in some of these areas. And so use this as a resource on this particular slide when you get it, because all of these things are important. All right. Because we're talking about your member benefits, plural, here, I want to go over a few of these things. When we wrap this up and we talk about how you can get more information, our welcome email really does a great job explaining a lot of these things. But we have 3 levels in terms of our campaigns: bronze, silver, and gold. And I already talked about silver and gold. Bronze is an offering for someone who is more budget conscious. And I always like to say that the bronze campaign is more ideally suited for a book that has a very targeted audience. So it's a little bit harder to do a bronze campaign for a book that has a lot of different target audiences. And I'll give you an example. So a bronze campaign could be really good for a book that, for instance, is to be read by CEOs, because you can really hone in on the media outlets that are read and watched and listened to by CEOs. We have a book that we're working on right now that is it's on the bronze campaign, and it's very targeted to a reader that would want to learn more about the very popular campaign, a very popular topic of hacking that goes on out in our world today. So that is a targeted campaign. An example of something that would have a lot of different audiences would be a book that you want to have pitched to parenting media and women's media and education media and local regional media, and all of those different publicity legs would be more suited to a silver or a gold versus having a book that's very, very, very targeted. Let's see, we already talked about some of this. The silver and the gold campaigns do include a spot on our NetGalley account. We have, I was telling Christopher, something that I think is fun to share is that we were the very first PR firm to ever sign up on NetGalley many, many moons ago when they first launched, and we are still with them today. And so we can put 10 of our books up at a time on our NetGalley account, and that is included in our silver and gold, not included in the bronze. I get asked this question all the time of how long is a typical publicity campaign. Most campaigns start out at being 4 to 6 months in length. And that, again, is customized based on the pub date and the budget and the timing when somebody comes to us. Some people come to us a year and a half before their publication, and others come to us saying, my book is coming out in February. What can I do? And so the timing is very much customized around at what stage in the game are we notified about the project, and it really runs the gamut. I told you I spend a lot of my days talking to potential clients, and it is not unusual for me to have one call where somebody has a book coming out in, let's say, fall of 2024, and the very next call, the author's book is coming out 2 months from now, like January 2024. Okay, real quick, hearkening back to the social media campaigns that I mentioned that come out of our digital department, we have 2 different options for people. We do also social media campaigns a la carte. So that is important. Now, I do want to be clear and say that our social media campaigns do not fall under the member benefit discount, because the member benefit is based on the bronze, silver, and gold campaigns. But if somebody only needs social media help, they can choose from our Launchpad or our hybrid accelerator. And the only difference between the two is that on the hybrid accelerator, we're really focused on pulling you in to do your part so that you learn what we're doing, for the purpose of, like, the old slogan of, like, teach a man to fish. So we're teaching you to fish, so to speak, in the hybrid accelerator, so that if you're only working with us for, let's say, 3 months on a social media campaign, that you are primed and ready to take that over and keep it running. Because the thing with social media, even more so than a PR campaign, is that, social media takes so much time to build up. It's a constant game of acquisition, acquiring followers, acquiring likes, acquiring more and more engagement. And that takes a really long time to build up. So you would never want to hire someone to handle your social media and then look at it as, let's say, a 3-month window and then just let it drop, because that's just a waste of your time and energy and money for sure. So the name of the game is we teach the author or the publisher, but most publishers, they want their authors doing it. So even if the publisher is hiring an outside firm, they want their authors taught, because it is going to benefit the publisher for the author to be out there really killing it on their own social media. Keeping an eye on time here. All right, let's talk about our author to influencer accelerator that we mentioned at the top of the hour. So like I said, we developed this almost 4 years ago as a way to give back to the literary community. As I mentioned, I've been in this community over 26 years. There's a lot of people who can't afford to hire a publicist, and we wanted them to have a way to do what they can do on their own, but have guidance, have a concierge, so to speak. And so our author to influencer accelerator, the URL is author2influencer.com. We created over 70 workshops that follow a 5-step success path. So from preparation to product, to platform, to planning, to promotion, we created all of these in-house. So it's either me teaching a session or it's me interviewing a colleague in the industry who has a focus that's outside of publicity. So maybe somebody who does cover design, or maybe somebody who is with a company that understands more about building up your newsletter list, for instance. So there's all of those on the learning platform, but equally as important in our author to influencer accelerator is our private Facebook group, where our members are in there, they're supporting each other, they're able to ask questions. Every time a question is asked, one of us goes in and answers it almost immediately. And once a month, we have our power hour, which is basically built-in consulting. So some of our power hours will invite a guest to talk about a particular topic. And other power hours are just come with your questions and let's just workshop some of this for you. And so that is so valuable to an author. I like authors to know, and I want you to know here at IBPA that the main reason we created Author to Influencer was for the publishers. Like when I had my ideal person in mind of who needed the accelerator, it was IBPA publishers. That is who was my figure in my brain of who I was building this for. So small independent publishers who they need a resource for their author. They need somewhere to send them to go and learn, go and do what you can. Our author to influencer was built to be extremely low cost for publishers to be able to say, hey, here's a resource for you. And they're not going to be just taking a bunch of your money and just taking over and doing everything for you. If you have a limited budget, go to the Author to Influencer Accelerator, dig in, learn what you can be doing, learn how this all works together, and use it as a resource. And so I just feel really passionate about it, because I really did think of the IBPA organization when I came up with this idea 4+ years ago, is to have this resource. So the website is really self-explanatory. You can get in, there's a little video to explain it. But if you as an IBPA publisher want to offer this to your authors, we work with small publishers to give them their own membership or their own code that they can give their authors at a bulk discount. So please remember that as an option, because I'm just so passionate about it. And, in book publicity, I'm often asked, like, what is the guarantee? And if you know anything about PR, there are absolutely no guarantees in PR. But what I feel really strongly about is that we work really hard to work alongside our authors, communicate with them, communicate with our publisher clients. We have a publisher client who's been with us about 5 years consistently now. It's a mid-sized publisher. We've worked with them for the entire history of our company off and on, but for about 5 years now, we have every season, the fall and the spring, we handle 3 books for them every season, and they tell us what 3 books they want us to handle. And so building long-term relationships like this are really, really important to us. We're a family-owned business. We work really hard to deliver those results. We work overtime. We make sure that we're working diligently to provide the results that somebody's paying for. And I will tell you that there are publishers that we've worked with over the years that have been very hesitant to commit to a full campaign with us. And they might have worked with us on a very small mini project. And when you're in a let's say a month-long project, it's very hard for somebody to see the ROI in 1 month because you're planting a lot of seeds. And we have worked double and triple time for people over the years to try to have those quantitative results that they can see for their investment. So I cannot overstate how important that is to us. We would not still be in business 21 years today if this, wasn't a real part of our culture. And so we feel really strongly about it. And I know I'm getting close to my Q&A time. So we've already talked about the first 2 bullets here. I just wanted to say a quick word about what makes a great partnership. So I just want to use that example of that publisher that has worked with us for about 5 years now. We trust each other that we're doing what each other needs to do. Here at PR by the Book, we're trusting that publisher to vet their authors and provide good quality books that make it realistic for us to pitch to media. They trust us to get results, and they know that we're going to work our tails off to get those results. But in terms of what makes a great partnership, you as a publisher, things that you can talk to your author about are being available for all opportunities, accepting all opportunities that come to them, making themselves available, whether it's an interview or submitting an article to be placed, or utilizing an excerpt from the book, responding in 24 hours. We take that very seriously. We work really hard to respond within 24 hours for all of our client questions, all of our client communication. If it's media, we're obviously responding within the hour. But that makes a great partnership. And really, that's what so much of PR by the Book has been built on. I was scrolling through the photos on my phone looking for something in particular, and I found a photo from 2014, Book Expo America 2014, me standing with one of our authors. And guess what? To this day, he is still a client. We have worked on so many books for him, and he has worked with independent publishers. And so for a decade, we have worked with this author, and that's a great partnership. And I feel so passionate about that. So here's a screen that gives you some more information, kind of what Christopher was talking about, and he shared links in the chat. So you can be aware of that. And when you contact us, you can let us know that you're an IBPA member. Here's more information about that. Here's our website, prbythebook.com. I also gave you the URL for Author to Influencer, but it's authortoinfluencer.com. And you can reach out to this email. This email goes to Melissa, our office manager. who will get you our welcome email, which includes not only pricing information, but also a link to book a call with me. All right. So we have about 15 minutes or so for questions.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, first of all. That was very informative. And we do have some questions. So I want to start with someone who's in the audience. So they said that virtual book tour 2 to 3 months prior to publication. So they asked, does the book have to be final by then, or can it be an arc?
So the book, we do virtual book tours for books that are being released in that particular month. So let's, I want to use an example. So today is pub date for 2 of our clients. And so we call those book birthdays. And so we have been working on their virtual book tours for several months now. And not all of the buzz happens on today, pub date, but it happens primarily within a week and definitely within the month of pub date, because as you know, we can't strong arm these bookstagrammers on Instagram and be saying like, you have to post today. So we just want to give them a time frame. We make it fun for them. We give them lots of assets that they need. We make it feel like it's an exclusive opportunity and that it's something that they want to be a part of. And so we are like riding this train down the track so that right around publication, all of this buzz starts happening. Now, I often get the question also, can you do a virtual book tour for a book that has been out? And the answer is yes. So we have had a lot of very successful virtual book tours for a book that has been out before the person came to us. So let's say, I'll just give you a real life example. So a book that came out during COVID, the author and the publisher just did not know what to do or how to do it. And kind of went into panic mode a little bit during COVID. Now I just want to say we've been a virtual company since we started 21 years ago. So COVID was not really even a blip for us in terms of how we do what we do. It's actually was somewhat of an exciting time on the book end of things because people were reading more than they had been. They were home. They could snuggle up on their couch and read a book on a Friday night instead of going somewhere with their friends. And so we actually, that provided a lot of opportunities for us. So we were doing that, but in this example, a project did not get off the ground. It was literally like a failure to launch for the publisher. And so they came back to us about a year and a half later and said, we care about this book. We know that there's things to be done and we love the book too. And so we put together just the virtual book tour. It was an a la carte that they purchased, just the virtual book tour by itself. And it got so much traction, really exceeded both of our expectations in terms of quantity of people participating and the buzz that came from it. And so we don't limit ourselves on timing. I will be very realistic with people in that discovery call on what that means to them in terms of timing. We'll talk about the challenges related to timing if it's something that, you know, falls under that kind of category. So I won't sugarcoat it, but I will be very realistic and say, okay, based on this topic, based on what we've got coming down the pike. So let's say this book has already been out, but it covers a very important mental health topic. I might say, hey, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Let's build up this timeline so that when May gets here, we have as much media hitting as possible to tell the public about this important topic because they need to be talking about Mental Health Awareness Month anyway.
Awesome. So one thing that I think you talked about realistic expectations. So I wanted to dig deeper into that. People, publishers, authors, they want to sell books, right? Like that's the thing. They're like, I want to sell books. So can you explain though, Publicity's part in all of that in terms of, like, when you help them with the campaign, or, like, I'm sure you're not like, we're going to sell 30 books, or, what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
what is Publicity's role in that in terms of book sales versus just getting the book out there in terms of exposure?
Okay, that is a great question because publicity does not always equal sales, first and foremost, and publicists don't have control over sales and distribution. So those are variables that are outside of our control. What we have control over is our ability to pitch. Excuse me, I got a little frog in my throat. So we are focused on the media outreach, and we're hoping that that media outreach will result in a lot of great opportunities for the author. And sometimes it might be sales, but we are really wanting to be very clear with the publisher and therefore the author that what we do may or may not translate into sales. So I want to give you an example with that. So as you can imagine, some authors are better on a podcast than others, for instance. So a publisher might have author A who is so outgoing and gregarious and can just nail it in a podcast interview, say the title of the book, tell people where they can buy it, really plant some really good golden nuggets of why they should purchase that book. And then you might have author B who is deathly afraid of talking in front of an audience, gets really nervous, forgets to say the title of the book, forgets to remember that it's always what's in it for them. So you have to keep that in mind. An example would be, we're working with, I know I'm going a little bit down a rabbit hole here, but I want to give you as many examples as possible. So we're working with a historical novel, and I've spent a lot of time editing pitches for this book with the campaign manager, because I want to be really clear with the media outlets of what's in it for them. And the fact that this author wrote this book based on his own family's history doesn't really matter to the podcast host. This author's family, the podcast host could care less about that. They want to know what's in it for my audience. And so ultimately, like, what am I as a host going to get out of having this author on? What is my audience going to learn? And so I spent a lot of time editing those talking points and tweaking some of that, because I want to focus in on what are the topics that are covered. Child labor, for instance, is a topic that's covered. How can the audience learn more about that and hear from someone who has done a tremendous amount of research in that arena? So they don't really care about his family. That doesn't matter about Aunt Jean and Uncle Billy. It's about what is the topic. And so it's really important that the author goes into each and every media opportunity, circling back to your question, Christopher, to make sure that they're saying what they need to say to push those sales as much as possible. And all authors are not created equal when it comes to their ability to do that once they're presented the media opportunity. So, I think it is important for us to talk to the publisher about, what are your goals? Because their goals are not necessarily always book sales. And also the author's goals don't always line up with the publisher goals. So we want to know both. We want to know, okay, if the publisher's goal is book sales, if the author's goal is to build up their social media following, use their book as a calling card to build up their business, all of those things, maybe get speaking opportunities. We want to have that full picture to know, okay, what are everybody's goals? And let's be clear that publicity does not always equal X number of book sales per interview, for instance.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I thought it's a good point for us to bring up. I get that a lot from people. And by the way, I really love learning about Aunt Jean and Uncle Billy. So just going to throw that out.
I'm going to send you that book after.
So people are wondering, when they come to you to become a possible client, what do you hope they have prepared? Do they need to have a press kit already created? Do they need to have a list of the awards? What type of materials do you expect to set things up properly?
Okay, I love that question. So here's some things that are great assets to have prepared. A website would be great. Having the social media platforms already set up and rolling is great. Having an outstanding book cover is a great asset for us. Having sample chapters ready to send us, because our vetting includes, once I have a conversation with someone, so let me back up one step. I do spend time preparing for all of my phone meetings, and I look at all these things: website, social media platform, book cover, read through the author bio on the website, for instance. So I want to have a full picture of what the campaign entails. And then I have the conversation, and then our homework is to read sample chapters, because we want to get a feel for writing style and characters and topics that are covered and all of that, so that we can adequately put together a publicity plan. If you haven't, you would never want to work with a publicist who had no idea what the product was and just said, oh yeah, I'll sign up on that silver campaign. That'd be great. And so we do vet in that way. So having all of those ready to go when you come to us as a potential client, whether it's the publisher coming and saying, I've got one book in mind particular I'd like to work with you on, or I've got 5 that come out this season that I'd like to talk about a bulk discount on, whatever that scenario is, having those assets ready to go for us to review, because ultimately, when and if the publicity campaign kicks off, got to have all that stuff in place anyway. You do not by any means have to have any press materials written, because even if you do, there's a good chance we're going to write our own. And so none of that is necessary. But going back to the website, I just want to say one quick thing. Having it be very clear and contemporary, with that, modern feel to it, is super helpful for us when we're going out there and selling the book to the media. They're going to go look, and if it looks like the headshot is from 1985, and that happens sometimes, then we will say that, and we will be very clear with, hey, might need to go get a new headshot so that we've got something that looks like it's from 2023 or 2024.
But what if someone looks better in leg warmers from the 1980s? I'm just saying. So,
well, you've seen those photos that you look at someone and you think, I feel like that was their corporate photo from 27 years ago.
Right. Yeah. Well, if they have some shoulder pads or something, you're like, all right.
The dead giveaway.
Yeah. Sure. Well, we're getting close to 11, but I do want to ask about social media. So it's something that people get very overwhelmed by. It feels like there's always some new platform. So I'm wondering if you have any tips in terms of, because people always say, you don't have to do all of them. So, but from your perspective, is there anything in particular like that they should be focused on, like any one or two that you're like, these are really good right now? And I know obviously based on genre, it'll probably change. But anyway, I just want to get your feedback on that.
Yeah, so I think genre is important, because if you've got a business book, you're probably going to make LinkedIn a priority. If you've got a novel or something really targeted to women, because women buy a lot of books, you're probably going to be honing in on Instagram as your number one. and maybe even Facebook is your number 2, unless you're willing to be active out there doing your own video content, you might not mess around with TikTok because that's what's going to be needed. If you're willing to get involved in TikTok, then just know that you want to be ready to be consistent with that video content, because TikTok is one that we will rarely handle for an author, because it's very difficult for us to constantly be putting out videos that don't involve the author. So I will tell you that the 2 that are most commonly used with our clients are Instagram and Facebook, based on their content and who they're going after and what their goals are. Now, X, formerly known as Twitter, if you've got a book that is political in nature, religious in nature, focused on some kind of social issues platform, X is probably going to be your number 1 related to that. So it does vary very much with genre. I will say, in terms of, for instance, we've got a couple of children's books, picture books right now. So Instagram is the number 1 for those. And because parents and grandparents and educators are the ones buying a lot of those children's books, we're also making sure that most of those people are on Facebook too. I hope that adequately answers your question.
Yeah. No, I know it's a big one people ask about. So, well, this was very informative, and I do hope everyone takes advantage of these benefits. I know that you've been an IBPA member for a long time. Thank you for the very kind words at the top. And it's just it's something that it's so helpful that, because publicity sometimes can get a little costly, but that you give a discount to our members, and that you're already part of the community, I think says a lot. So we appreciate it, and we hope people will take advantage of them. And thank you again, Marika.
Absolutely. Happy to be here and happy to continue to stay a part of the community. Maybe I'll see people at Publishing University in the spring.
Hope so. Thanks, everyone.